In this video, we're going to do a simple bowl-shaped coil pot. To begin with, we're going to make a coil, or show you how to make a coil, and then I will proceed on how to do this assignment. Now you can start your coil just by the palms of your hands. Get it a little bit longer. When it's about like this, then you can take the palms of your hands and get on a work surface and just roll the coil out, trying to get a nice even thickness of the coil. You don't want one side thin, one side thick, just a nice even thickness. Now for this technique, I'm going to have both ends be just a little bit tapered, a little bit thinner. And since I'm not going to be adding this coil right away, I'm going to add a little bit of moisture so it doesn't dry out before I have a chance to add it. Now, for this assignment, you're going to have to find a bowl. Okay, it can be any shape bowl, any size. It can be wide, it can be a little bit more vertical, but the one thing that you don't want it to do is go up and in at the top. You just want a nice bowl form, because this is going to act as your mold. Okay, now if we would try to make the pot on the inside of a slick bowl like this, it would stick, and then when it would dry and shrink, it would crack because the clay is shrinking and sticking at the same time, and it would be like a muddy riverbed, and it would crack like that. So we need to allow some way for the pot or the clay to dry and shrink without sticking to the bowl. So what I did is I got a very thin plastic produce bag. This came from some asparagus that I had the night before. We're just going to put it on the inside of the bowl. And you want to try to not have a lot of wrinkles in the clay, because that will give your project unwanted texture. So we'll put that off to the side. The first step for this pot is coming up with the bottom. Now you can make a swirl of a coil, but the easiest way is just starting out with a ball of clay and flattening it out. And you don't need it terribly wide. This will just be the base of our bowl, or the bottom. The thickness should be about, a little less than ½ an inch, but not too thin. Too thin would let it crack a little bit too easy. So you're just going to lay that clay in the bottom of the bowl and pushing it so it forms to the contour of the bowl. And for the first coil, you're just going to score on the inside edge. This way you don't see any of the score lines on the outside of the bowl, and you'll see that when I take the bowl out of the mold when it's done. Just like that. And the scoring does not have to be super aggressive, because we're going to blend the clay from the coil onto the base. So the end of the coil is tapered like this. You're just going to lay it on the side of the base, trying not to get any plastic between the coil and the base. You just take a little time, and that's the key. When you lay the coil in here, you want to make sure that there is no plastic getting in between the base and the coil. Now when the coil gets to the point where it overlaps, just continue on. Okay. And this will take a little practice, but what you're doing is blending the coils into the base. And you're actually pushing quite a bit of, almost half that coil into the base. Just add a little bit of moisture. And with this plastic, it will slide around a little bit, but you can reposition it with no problem. So there we have the first coil. Now you don't see the coil, you'll see it when it comes out of the mold, but for right now you will not see the coil. Now the rest of it, I'm going to do it in time lapse because it's all a matter of just going around and around and around until I reach the top. For the last coil on the top of the bowl, I want it to be just a little bit thicker so it has a nice lip. So you can see the coil that I rolled. The same process. You're going to score the inside edge of the previous coil. And since we're blending in so much, I'm not quite scoring like I have been doing in my other demonstrations. The scoring is not quite as severe. But it's very important that when you do add the coil, you blend that coil in extremely hard or firm. Add a little water. And I am purposely putting this on the inside edge and where it's overlapped like this is the only time for this demonstration I'm going to cut through both surfaces or both layers of the coil and put them together. Lining this up on the bowl the way you want it. And then finally, either using your fingers or your thumb, blending that top coil securely into the bowl. That. Now once you have the bowl made, you might have some rough edges on the inside. Now's the time you spend a little bit of time, much like you did with your pinch pots, smoothing that inner surface. Be aware that if you push too hard, the outside texture of the coil will disappear. So I'm just smoothing it out, not really pushing so hard that I lose the look of the coil on the outside. And you'll see what I'm talking about as soon as this sets up and I pull this bowl out of the mold or outside of your support bowl. But doing a simple bowl shape pinch pot with a mold like this or a form assures you of a very nice symmetrical outside that you really don't have to worry about because the bowl does the shaping for you. I'll smooth this out a little bit more. And when I come back in a number of hours, and this is set up enough for me to pull out without it losing its shape, I will show you the finished product. After your project gets leather hard, you can take a sponge and just smooth the inside surface out. So it's nice and finished. You don't want to get the sponge too wet, just wet enough to really work the surface of the inside. And at this point, it slides around pretty easily because it's firmed up. I'll let it sit a few minutes and I'll show you what it looks like on the in or on the outside. Okay, we've let it set for a couple of minutes, and now all I'm going to do is carefully pull the bowl out of the mold. And this is what it looks like, an exact replica of your bowl. Now you have to realize that when you make this project, if you select a bowl this size, it's going to turn out this size because it's going to be made on the interior of the pot. If you try to do this on the outside, as the clay dries, it shrinks, and when it shrinks, it will crack if it's on the bowl because the bowl cannot shrink with it. So here is our first coil project where we make a simple bowl form using a mold from an existing bowl that you have at home and a plastic bag to keep it from sticking.